Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending today's webinar, Concurrent Engineering Made Easy, Part 2. Our presenter today is Chris Sangrides of Blucello. Chris has over 25 years of experience in engineering document management, including several years working as an independent consultant. He's been with Blucello for over 15 years, providing technical knowledge and professional services recommendations to companies in numerous industries and locations throughout the world. Today, he will help you discover how to simplify the management of parallel engineering tasks within complex projects. But before we begin, a bit of housekeeping. I want to let everyone know that you're in listen-only mode. Please make note of any questions you may have as we go along, and at the end of the presentation, we'll invite you to type your questions, which I will then read to Chris for him to answer. Additionally, all those attending today will receive a thank you email from us with a link to view the recorded version of this webinar. So with that, Chris, you can go ahead and begin whenever you're ready.
Thanks very much, Susan, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for investing your time to learn a little bit about concurrent engineering. This is the second of the presentations, and the first Concurrent Engineering Made Easy webinar. We focused on the challenges that owner-operators, such as yourselves, face when executing multiple engineering and maintenance projects in parallel. In this webinar, we'll dive into some of the tasks involved in this parallel effort. So with that, let's get started. While many changes are underway in the same facility, we'll take a look at the following in this webinar. Ways to keep the entire organization up to date with project changes and project phases, review complex 3D CAD designs, and facilitate multidisciplinary reviews. We'll continue with collaboration for lightweight exchange of documentation and take a peek at a full-featured portal. Also, with safety and reliability reviews, we'll talk about how you can add electronic signatures, watermarks to your release documents. We'll end with project progress controls, such as dashboards, to help your team and stakeholders stay up to date on top of it all. Okay, let's dive in with some of the common challenges associated with concurrent engineering. So within a facility, here we see a refinery. Small change projects are taking place concurrently. Some of them independent of each other, but many of them overlap. The overlap may occur on the functional location, on the specific equipment, on the lines, and more. So for example, during a retrofit project, we may have to redesign or replace a piece of equipment. Many owner-operators design with 3D tools like Inventor or SolidWorks, and then the design reviews can be done with these 3D designs. During these reviews, various disciplines, and that's what we'll focus on here, can give their input. For example, the electronic group needs to adjust the wiring harness, or the mechanical group may need to reroute the flow. During the production or manufacture of this equipment, the operations or maintenance team may give their input, typically with 2D design files. And of course, we'll need to keep everyone up to date, the entire project team, all stakeholders, the finance folks, managers, the VPs, with reports and dashboards. A lot easier to understand than this guy's whiteboard. Let's start by taking a look at how to manage, how to keep maintenance and operations informed of active design changes. We'll take a look at some of the tools to keep the project work on track, and we'll take a look at some of the tools available to the design team while they're designing in 3D. So maintenance and operation folks typically look for current asset-related information within a computerized maintenance management system like SAP PM or IBM Maximo or FAMUS or any one of many others. The approved or released technical documents, on the other hand, are managed within Blucello Meridian. And these documents can be shared with the entire organization with a web client called the Blucello Explorer. In addition, Blucello Explorer can share these documents that are being created and even changed as part of projects. This is a configuration option that you make to share the in-progress documents in addition to release documents. So let's jump into the live software and take a look at this. During the flip-flop between the PowerPoint and the live software, I'm going to be switching to a couple of virtual machines, so bear with me while we do that now. So here I am in a live instance of a computerized management system, maintenance management system, in this case Maximo, but the connection can also work with SAP, PM, FAMUS, and many others. While the user is looking at the current information about the piece of equipment or functional location, pump in this case, we would like to provide a very easy way for this user to get access to the technical documentation that's managed by Meridian. We can walk the administrators through the process of adding a button to the screen, so the user simply clicks a button and up comes a dialog that shows us all the technical documents that are associated with this piece of equipment. We can also see that these documents are approved and released in this case, and we see that this P&ID is being created, and we see that this release document actually has a project copy associated with it. It's up to you whether you also share the project copies that are currently being designed and changed. In this case, we are. This particular document is the project copy of that design document. We can see a lot more has been added to this design than was before in the release copy. So this is a way that we can keep everyone in the loop about what's going on in the design world. Let's jump back. There we go. So we just saw an accurate way that we can represent technical documentation that's actually being changed to everyone in the organization. Let's take a look at how we can also change or help the design team. In this case, we're going to take a look at an example of a design team updating a piece of equipment. We're going to be adding some components to it, removing and changing some things, and these are being done in 3D. And we're going to see a way that we can compare these 3D designs so that our design team can be efficient. To do this, I'm going to switch to a live instance of Meridian, and we see here that we have a assembly of this blower in actually a single project. I'll be using this kind of a organization throughout the demonstration where we track master documentation and we put changed documents into projects, into various kinds of projects. And for example, this blower assembly is in a work-in-progress project, and we can see that it's being worked on. We can rotate, we can move the assembly around. We can also see that the same blower assembly is in another project being worked on. So what I'm going to do is highlight both of them, and through the compare feature that's built into Meridian, we can put these two complex 3D assemblies side by side and compare them, and we can see the differences right away. But we can also click at a single button and ask the system to make comparison for us on the component level. So for example, we can see that the duct was added, we see that it was removed actually, we see that a motor was added, maybe a larger one. We can even take the assembly and rotate it around, and all of the components go along with it, including the original and the target assemblies. So this is a great way for the design team working in 3D to help understand what's going on with the different components that are being changed as part of different projects. Let's jump back. And the next topic we're going to cover is how do we help with the project workflows. You may know that within Meridian we can put documents through workflows, approval workflows for example. We can also do the same thing for entire projects. Now what's also interesting is that we can build rules in place. So for example, this project is going from its feasibility stage and we want to go through the detailed design stage, and we can see the current state, where's my mouse, there we go, is the current feasibility state, which is outlined in red. And we can see there's a rule in place that blocks us from executing the transition to go through to detailed design because there's rules in place. Now those rules can be, for example, some documents are not approved, some documents don't exist, for example a budget's not approved or the design is not finalized. In Meridian, these connections between the project workflow and the documents workflow is called interlocks and may be applied in both directions as well. So let's take a look at this workflow, for example, and see where this might exist. So we'll jump back to the Meridian system that we were in before. Let me close this dialog box. And we can see that the documents themselves are actually undergoing workflow, and we can click on the project itself that the document is contained, and we can see that the project itself has a workflow associated with it. In this case, this is the same workflow that we saw earlier, where we're sitting in the feasibility stage and we're currently blocked from executing the design transition because not all the documents are approved. We can also put other rules in place. For example, a document type that is a budget in the project is not yet approved. That blocks us from going forward. Or, for example, the transition is only available to a certain number of people, project managers, document controllers, and the like. Okay? Let's go ahead and jump back. And before we continue on with the rest of the presentation, I want to go ahead and take a moment and take a quick poll to ask you guys a question. When design changes involve multiple disciplines in your organization, how is this approval process done? For example, does each discipline do their own approval and then they are consolidated by someone on the project? Or do representatives from all the disciplines gather together and review the design, or some other way? Go ahead and use the interactive quick poll to let us know, and we'll go ahead and summarize what we found. Okay. Thank you. And it looks like it's all over the board, isn't it? About a third of you guys say that each discipline manages their own. About a third says all of them are tied together, and about a quarter varies throughout the project, for each project. That's an even spread over the entire gamut of options. Thank you very much. I appreciate your input. It's very interesting to know as well. So let's go ahead and get back to the presentation then. And we'll dive into some other topics such as CAD integration. We're going to dive into a little bit more detail on how some of the concurrent engineering capabilities within the Meridian system assist with the CAD design. So for example, CAD documents such as this P&ID can have a multitude of references and relationships with other documents. Using the Show Reference Documents button, which is this little chain link icon up here, we can see that the references are currently turned off. We can just see the document itself. We can choose to turn on different references. For example, in this case, we'll turn on the AutoCAD X references. We can see that there's two documents that are referenced, the pump and the vessel. Let's see some other references, like any project copies. We see that there are two active project copies and several historical project copies, which are grayed out. We can also selectively show other references, such as equipment tag and functional location references. We'll jump into the software and take a look at these. And for this, I'm going to be jumping into a virtual machine that we saw already, but I have a copy of Meridian running, and we're on that same P&ID we saw earlier. So in this case, I'm actually looking at the master documentation for this particular plant. A second ago, when we were looking at 3D designs, we were looking at project files. So in this case, we see that there is a P&ID that references a lot of equipment, pumps, vessels, etc. And we can see the relationship to those through this reference documents shortcut here. So for example, clicking on this will show us the reference browser. Now in this case, we see that all of the references are actually turned off. And I'll go ahead and just selectively turn them on so we can see what's going on. I'll turn on the external references, and we see that this P&ID document, which is sitting in the master's location, is referencing a pump and a vessel, which actually happen to be in different locations. They're some templates of ours that we're using here. Okay, so let's turn on some other references. For example, master copies or project copies through the vault. And we see that in addition to the CAD references that are child references on the right, we see parent references which are project copies. We can see that there are two active project copies, and there are several historical project copies that we can see there are different locations in the archive locations, and they are marked as inactive. That's important because of various reasons. We may want to block them from being viewed by various people. We may want to put security on them. We may also want to trigger document retention rules on those. So let's dive into and take a look at some other ones. For example, a tag doc reference. And this actually has to do with the connection we saw earlier between a Maximo or SAP equipment IDs and the connection that we have with these technical documents. So this being a P&ID, it references quite a lot of equipment. So we can see right away that this central P&ID that we're on references some valves, some hand valves, equipment, even functional location, for example, and this information has come from our computerized maintenance management system, and we have connected it to this technical document, in addition to all the other references, for example. Okay. So this helps a lot with the design process. So if I'm going to be changing a piece of equipment in this P&ID, I also have a relationship reference to the parent tag, and I can go to that tag and see other related technical documents, for example. Okay, let's jump back to our presentation, and we'll take a look at some other relationships. So for example, during the review process which we talked about earlier, if we need to route one document through a workflow, that one document may have other connections. As we saw, we have several connections, like CAD references that may need to be approved as well. We have other project copies that we need to be aware of. In this case, what we've done is connected other technical documents. For example, if we need to change the size of the motor, or if we need to link together several documents such as the P&ID to the 3D design diagrams, so that the electrical team or engineering maintenance can give their input. So we can tie these documents together so they can move together in the approval process. In this case, we called it a routing sheet. You can call it whatever you want. And we'll jump in and see how this works. So let's jump to our live software again. And in this case, what I'm going to do is use this reference dialog to show us the different project copies. And I'll go ahead and jump into this project copy, which is in the major construction project, and I simply right-click on it and tell Meridian to go to that project copy. So it takes me to that project copy, and we can see that the current state of the document is under change, and we can see the next step in the workflow for us is to start the review. The issue transition is actually blocked for us because of several business rules. I don't have the rights to do that. There may be some other checks and balances in place. So I can either take this document by itself and transition it to the review state, or of course I can highlight others with a shift key and highlight multiples, and that's a manual step. A really easy way to do that is to connect the documents together. In this case, what we've done is we've set up a simple routing sheet identifier. So this document is identified as part of a routing sheet, and when I take the document and tell it to start the review, I will be able to start the review and tell the users that are supposed to be changing this. Let's say ready for review, and we'll assign the reviewers. For example, Mark, Donna, and Dan, and I'm going to remove myself from that. So in this case, I've actually selected several people all at once to review this document. And that may be because one of them is the electrical engineer, one of them is the structural engineer, one may be the maintenance person to give us feedback, and everybody needs to say yes before the design goes forward. So that's part one, is selecting multiple folks if we want to. Secondly is, as soon as I trigger the transition on this one document, I see that the routing sheet process kicks in and says, hey, there are other documents on this routing sheet, should we route them all together? So we can grab everything together at the same time without having to do any kind of manual changes or any manual searches, for example. Okay, so that kind of connection helps the design team, the engineering team, the review team to make sure that they grab all the related documents and don't miss anything. Let's go ahead and jump into and take a look at some collaboration. While some design work is done by internal teams, more and more design work is actually outsourced to contractors, we found, either local or regional trusted design firms or even global EPCs that will oversee large projects. While the internal design team is busy with updates to the facility documentation, the maintenance and operations teams are also busy adjusting and optimizing the facility. There is now a necessity that these two teams communicate well together to ensure that field changes are accurately communicated to the design team and that the design team accurately communicates plan changes. Add to this the fact that major projects are being planned simultaneously, the need to communicate as well as share accurate information increases. Blue Cello Meridian actually offers several ways to accomplish these, and we'll dive into a couple of them. So first of all, let's take a look at how we can easily send out packages of documents to external parties from an easy-to-use and available to everyone Blue Cello Explorer. So we're going to be showing an example of us grabbing a number of documents, putting them in a package or naming a package, and sending the documents to a contractor. And in this case, we're going to emulate the send out to an FTP. So for example, from inside of our organization, we have a folder available to us that we can copy files to that external collaborators need an FTP access to fetch it, for example. So let's dive into the software and see what we've got here. I'm going to go into Explorer. Here we are. So this is the interface of Meridian Blue Cello Explorer, which is the read-only interface for any organization to have access to our documentation. And remember, you can either choose to only share released, approved documents, or we can also share documents that are currently work in progress. In this case, we're doing both. Let's dive in and take a look at the documents we need. And we're going to grab the documentation for the Atlanta plant, and we're going to grab the documents that are used for mechanical and maintenance, for example. So with a few simple clicks, I'm able to narrow down the documentation set that I need. What I'm going to do now is select all these guys, from some reference guides to seal arrangements, etc., and I'm going to put them into a collection. Simply right-click and add them to a collection, and we'll see that there are some existing collections. We're going to put them into a new one and call this one Mechanical Review. And of course, we're going to put it into a package because we want to share this collection. Okay? And of course, we can do this with other sets of documents. We can create collections left and right for different disseminations. And we can review these collections by simply just jumping to the collections listing here. And we can see the very new mechanical review collection that we just created here with a set of documents that we've chosen. Okay? So what we're done, when we're done collecting these documents and we're ready to send it on, we just specify a few other parameters. For example, who's it going to go to, what's the purpose, and then push the button to send it. First, let's do those in two separate steps. First of all, I want to edit this collection and look at and point to the destination. So for example, we're going to choose the mechanical contractor. And this is an important note here because what we're going to do is put it into a certain folder on our FTP site for this particular recipient. If this doesn't exist, we'll go ahead and create it. The description, we'll call it turbine installation for reference, for example. And the destination is a job that I've created on my enterprise server, export these sets of documents to our FTP. And we're going to include the rendition only in this case because they're only for reference. Now, I want to pause for a second and show you a little bit of background before I push the button and send it. I mentioned earlier that we're going to send this to a location on our network where a contractor will need FTP access to fetch it from. And we're going to put it into a subfolder or location by the recipient name. Let me take a look at that location first. And this is my FTP target location, FTP route under packages out, sending out, right? And so far, we've only got one contractor sets of documents going out to the electrical contractor. What I want to do now is finish this package that we've got in Explorer, push the button and send these documents out and see if they land in this folder structure here. So let's go back to Explorer. We're finishing with the editing of this, and we're done. So if we need to modify other packages, maybe get an approval from our document controller, we can do all that, and when we're ready, we can click the button to send the package. And this will trigger the documents to get compiled, put together in a single zip file. We can create a transmittal sheet that lists all the documents out, and then this set of documents is now available for the contractor to download from the FTP site. To check that, let me go back to my Explorer here, and we can see that in the same folder, Packages Out, we have a new folder called Mechanical Contractor, which is the target that we specified earlier. And we can see it is created at 11:26, which is the same current time at Eastern Time. And inside this folder, we see that there is a zip file that contains all the technical documents, and also a spreadsheet that contains a listing of all the documents. Let me just pop this open to show you the listing of all the technical documents we have in there, and also any other information you wish to specify. Okay? So that's another way that we can easily take documentation from our repository and then send them out to a contractor in a clean package in a very easy to use way. Let me jump back to our slideshow. So from here we saw one way of sending packages of documents out. Let's go ahead and turn the tables around and see how we would receive that package. Now, that way of sending documents out actually is in addition to the way that Meridian, the tool that we use to create and edit documents, can package documents and send them out as well. So we can send them out either way. Contractors and vendors then would update the documents and even add new ones and return the package. So once received, we can import those documents or review them and compare them before we accept them. Let's do that in the live software. Let me jump back to our live software again, and to do that I'm going to jump into the Meridian software. Let's go ahead and continue this. That's fine. I forgot we left the rest of the process out. We just push the button and continue the documents into the review state as before. So let's say, for example, now we have received a number of documents in a package and we need to import them. I don't need to be anywhere specific in the software to do that, so I'll just leave it where it is and simply tell the software to import from the briefcase. And this is when we receive the documents back in a package from the contractor. We have received it and just simply double-clicked on it within Meridian, and we see that there's a couple of briefcases we've received. One of them is from the subcontractor. Let's open this briefcase, and we can see the documents that we have sent out, including some technical documents. This list of documents has not changed, so it groups them for us. And it shows me that this document has actually changed, and the contractor has actually included a brand new document for us here. So it compares the package that we have sent out and shows us, in comparison to the documents that came in, that we have a brand new document. Let's go ahead and peek at this document and see what it looks like. It's the symbols that they use in their P&ID, which is fine. But what's also more interesting is that we can see that within this package we have a document that we have sent out, and the contractor has changed, and they've sent it back. We can also view this document, but more importantly, we can compare this document to the document that we have internally. And we can see that compared to the document that we have internally, and this is the document they have sent us, the compare window will show us the geometry that's changed, showing us additions in green and deletions in red. Looks like a line was moved from one component to the other. Let's jump back to where we were. So that's an example of how we would receive a package of documents back. And of course, once they're back into our workflow, we can then pass them on to an internal review, and then of course release to master, and it becomes available for everyone. Other ways that we can collaborate, for example, includes an online collaboration. We've been developing a portal that is integrated with Meridian. This can be used to safely exchange engineering documents with contractors. It provides for formal and informal sharing of documents, automatic validation of CAD references, full audit logs, and it's massively scalable. We'll be having a webinar on this technology soon, actually, so keep an ear out for that. So what we're going to do now is jump into some design review topics. And before we make that transition, I want to ask you guys another question. Earlier we talked about how are multiple discipline reviews done. In this case, I want to ask you a little more pointed question about how many disciplines are involved for each of the design reviews. On average, how many are they? Let's answer this question in regards to the medium to large changes, those that involve more than just minor changes, for example. So take a minute and just let us know, and we'll tell everyone what the summary is. Okay, so it looks like the vast majority of multidiscipline changes involves 2 to 4 disciplines, about more than 80%. So there are few that have more than only one discipline in larger designs. So this is exactly what we've been talking about, that multidiscipline reviews are going to be the norm, and they are typically the norm, as you guys are telling us, in these reviews. So let's go ahead and switch back to the presentation. We'll continue with some of the discussions on design reviews. Okay, so whether your review process is simple, like this one, or complex, which we see a lot in regulated environments, or somewhere in between, Meridian can help the right people know when they have something to do, even if multiple people need to review the same document, just like you guys just told us. For example, an electrical engineer needs to review the updated wiring. The structural engineer may need to review the integrity of the design. And someone from the fabrication shop needs to make sure it's feasible with the current machinery. So let's take a look at the various ways that workflows can be triggered. And later on, we'll see what kind of automation steps we can do. To do this, let me jump back to the Meridian software again. We'll cancel out of this guy. And what I'm going to do is quickly just see my to-do list, for example. That's an easy way to see a bunch of documents that are undergoing change. And to do that, I'm going to switch the navigation view from the plain Explorer view to look at the documents that are on my to-do list. Now I see that there's lots of documents here. For example, there's a CAD file, this diagram here, and we can see that I am logged in as Adam, and I am responsible for changing this document right now. And the workflow for it goes, just like we saw earlier, from under change, and I can send it for review, whether this is a single review, single discipline review, for example, or it is a multidiscipline review. This can handle the review process. Another thing to look at, for example, is that from the review process, we have a couple of ways it can go, either approve or rejected. And of course, in the rejected stage, we can collect a bunch of feedback. Maybe multiple people need to give us information about why it's rejected. So let's compare this workflow to the workflow for the motor assembly, which is 3D design, and maybe we have multiple people working on this design. For example, someone's working on the inside part of the motor assembly, someone's working on the structure of the outside, and we can see that the workflow for it, oops, sorry, wrong button. We can see that the workflow for it actually looks very similar to our 2D design, but now it includes a quality control, a QC design, for example, or a QC review. This is very typical of the reviews that we see in regulated environments. They'll have the design technical review, and then they'll have the quality review, make sure everything's according to policies, for example. One other thing I'd like to show you is how these documents are being modified by different people. So for example, we have a 3D design here of a motor. What I'd like to do is switch my view now to show me where this document exists in the folder structure. And I can see that as part of this blower assembly, I see that Donna is working on a great many of the components. I can see that Dan is working on the actual design of the external parts of it. And if we scoot further on down, we can see that other folks may be working, Eric is working on the actual motor assembly. So on the one single assembly, which is this blower assembly, and it has a lot of different parts, we can see that many people are working on different parts. And I can see from my perspective, I can modify some, these ones that are in blue, and I can see that others are working on other documents. For example, Donna is working on a lot of these components, but I don't have edit access to them, but I can see them because I may need to use them in my assembly modifications, for example. Let me jump back to our discussion then, and we'll go on to the next item, which is how do we handle, in the workflows, how do we handle a lot of different aspects of automation. Workflows are not just to let people know they've got something to do. They can also be used for automation, such as automatically creating a PDF for each file, maybe adding a print stamp to automatically show up when documents are printed, maybe applying a watermark to let users know the status of the document, and maybe even adding electronic signatures if you have adopted that. And even going to the previous revision of a document and updating the watermark on that previous revision to something like historical revision. So let's take a look at these in more detail. And to do that, actually, I'm going to use Meridian environment, but actually I'm using another vault, another repository to show the regulated or electronic signature parts of it. So in this case, I have a released master document for a particular facility. It's a flow diagram. And in this case, I can see the CAD, the native file, and I can see the design of it as a designer or as a user that has these rights. Oops. There we go. What I also am able to do is switch the view from the native file, CAD file, to the rendition. And we can see that the rendition also includes not only the geometry of the document, but it also includes the watermarks that we've been talking about. So for example, I can zoom into the middle area here and it shows me the watermark as released. I can also pop back out and release to the bottom left, which we have configured to put in the electronic signature. So the rendition of the currently released latest and greatest version includes all of these. So as we share this technical drawing or technical diagram with others, they can immediately see that it's been electronically signed. They can immediately see the status of the document. So let's take a look at what's going on in the historical revision. This is revision B currently. So what I'm going to do is jump back and take a look at a previous revision, say revision A, and I'm going to take a look at that drawing or that document. And right away I see the native content, which is the CAD file. What I'd like to do is now switch to the rendition, and we can see the electronic signatures down here. We also see that the watermark has been updated on the historical revision to notify this is a prior revision. So if someone accidentally or intentionally prints out an older revision, they're immediately notified and very obviously notified that this is a prior revision they're working on, is not the current up-to-date one. Okay, let's close this, and I'll close the revision box. And now we'll say, let's say for example, someone does want to view the current rendition and wants to print it out for review in the field, for example. They can either use a Surface tablet, for example, and walk around the facility, or what typically happens is that we have users opening the rendition, and in this case I'm going to just open it in Adobe. And we can see that the document shows us the released watermark here, shows us the electronic signature on the bottom, and as soon as the users print it, they'll get exactly this. I don't think we'll need the tools from Adobe, so we'll turn that off. What I'd like to do is show you what the print stamp looks like up here. We can see the little blue mark, which is where the print stamp is going to show up as soon as the user prints this document. to see that in a little more detail, let me go ahead and zoom this document to 100% so we can be in the very, very top. And I'm going to do a normal function a user does. Is simply click to print the document. Yep, that's my printer. Click OK. And as soon as the user clicks print, we can see the print stamp automatically being generated with the current date and time and what the default text that you want to show up. For example, we want to make sure that the user is required to ensure this document is valid, or whatever other information you want to make available or show on the print stamp. So that's another example that can be automated from these workflows. So let's jump back to our presentation. Where were we? Okay. And now we're going to look at a couple of ways that we can handle some project progress controls. Let's elevate the discussion a little bit and take a look at ways that we can let the entire organization stay informed about the changes that are being planned and changes in the field that still need to be documented. So, for example, the Explorer that we saw earlier, the Product Explorer, has a dashboard that can be customized to collect and summarize data in various ways. These examples were configured to show an array of capabilities. So that's Explorer dashboard functionality. Now, since Explorer compiles all kinds of data, other business intelligence tools can be used to dashboard the information, such as SQL Server Report Builder, for example, from Microsoft. In this case, this graphic is a dashboard that was quickly created using the online tools of Tableau, a dashboarding company. And this particular example uses site intelligence tool from a company called iNetSoft. So the data is in Explorer, so you just use your dashboarding tool or the tools that are built into Explorer to take a look at these. Let's take a look at the dashboard that's in Explorer right now. Information can be consolidated in the dashboards that's available in this Explorer dashboard. Let's go ahead and jump into that and show you that. Let's go back to our interface here, and I'm going to go back to Mr. Explorer. And what I've done is I have gone into the views of our documents and tags and collections here. What I'm going to do now is jump back to the home screen of Explorer. And of course, this is where we started and looked at the views of documents. In this case, I'm going to jump into and look at the dashboard. And of course, this is the dashboard that comes with Explorer out of the box. It can collect information over time, for example, how documents have changed over time, and also give us a good snapshot of what's going on today. Now, I said that the data is being collected in the SQL repository of Explorer, so you can even use your own tools to do that. In this case, I have used the online tools of Tableau to literally feed it information about our Explorer repository, and it has created this dashboard for us. So for example, we can take a look at what information, what documents relate to oil and gas, and other information about this. This is a live dashboard based on our data. So this is something that can be done with your organizations. Let's go ahead and jump back. And what I'm going to do now is just pause for a second and summarize our discussion so far, and we'll dive into a Q&A. So with the use of Bluecello's concurrent engineering functionality, you can ensure that the stakeholders have the right information at the right time in a way that they can use it. I'm going to go ahead and jump through a couple of these. This one talks about you can improve the way you can exchange data and documents with contractors. We can ensure that the project is delivered according to plans and maintain full proof of control of project deliverables. And this is very important for internal audits and also for external audits by regulatory bodies. So Bluecello has over 1,200 customers in over 50 countries with over 300,000 users, and they manage a combined $1.5 trillion worth of assets. Within these 5 industries of owner-operators, you'll find many of the largest companies using Bluecello software. In addition, the company names listed at the top are just a few of our customers that use concurrent engineering today. You can see and hear them discuss their use of Blucello software on our website under Resources. Let me jump and show you that. So here on the Blucello website, under Resources, we can see the videos connection, and in that we have some pre-recorded or webinars just like this one that have been recorded and are available for you to review anytime. Also on the website you can take a look at under Products one module for Blucello Meridian called Advanced Project Workflow. This is the software module that delivers the concurrent engineering functionality we've been talking about. And actually at the very bottom of this page we'll see a webinar recording of Grifols, a pharmaceutical company that has been on a webinar and discusses their use of concurrent engineering, not only concurrent engineering but also the use of Meridian as a whole and what benefits it has shown them. I want to go ahead and quickly refresh the page and the video should show up at the very bottom. Okay, let's move on. So after using Blucello software, our customers typically see a very impressive rate of return. Let's do the numbers. For example, rate of return compares the cost of the software implementation with the savings and benefits realized. This actually shows that the value to owner-operators of the solution is almost 4 times the implementation. And also, many of our customers have seen payback in less than 9 months. I'm going to go ahead and open up the discussion right now, and what you can do on the toolbar for the Go to Webinar is use this area to type in your questions, and we'll be able to see them, and I will be able to answer the questions right away.
All right, thank you, Chris. Let me take a minute here and go through the questions.
Thanks, Susan.
First question we have here is, we do our approvals on paper. Does that tie in? How does that tie into the electronic workflows?
Okay, so the approvals currently are done on paper. So there's actually several ways you can go forward with this. The first is to continue using paper for approvals and just scan the signed paper document into Meridian as the rendition. So you can keep an electronic copy of that, and everyone in the organization has access to the approved document, even though the physical document can exist in one location. The second way would be to transition the approval process to the document workflow in Meridian. This may take some getting used to, but it will save a lot of time and money over time. Consider all the printing costs and the time it takes to physically move the paper from person to person.
Okay, great. Next question. How does a review process work when my internal sources are working from multiple different locations?
So the question has to do with the review process having or involving folks that are in different locations. Let's say, for example, Meridian is installed in one location. Well, users don't have to be in the same location to participate in the review process. Users can access Meridian from anywhere using, for example, the web client, which, by the way, has about 90-95% of the functionality as the desktop thick client. This way, the remote users can view, compare, and review the documents from anywhere.
Okay. Another question here.
Yep.
You referenced a webinar where you focused on concurrent projects. Is that available to watch somewhere?
Yes. The recording of the webinar that was focused on concurrent projects is available for viewing on Blucello's website. In the resources menu, we saw the video link. There you'll see a listing of various webinars. Look for the one that's titled Concurrent Engineering Made Easy.
Okay. Is the drawing compare function shown in the power user also available in the web interface?
The compare functionality can be made available in the web interface, and that should include an install of the viewing application on the workstation that's going to be using the web client. This is actually part of the web client setup that we include as part of the package. That is a lot easier to do the compare locally than over the web, for example, using the client server viewer.
Okay. Is there a limit to the number of concurrent copies the system can manage at one time?
No, there's no limit as to the number of concurrent project copies a document can have. This is actually a business decision you can make. You can stop users from making a fourth or a fifth copy and limit it to 2 or 3.
Okay. And another question, can the print stamp you showed be configured for different date formats? So month, day, year instead of day, month, year.
Yes, it can. That was an example that we configured, I think, using North American standards, yes.
All right. Can the print stamps be relocated to help satisfy its visibility?
Yes. The print stamp that we chose was typically in the top left because we configured the electronic signature to be in the bottom left. You can rotate and place the print stamp anywhere you want to on the page.
Okay. What else do we have here? We outsource all of our engineering, including approvals. Could our contractor somehow use this system to do the approvals?
Yes, there's actually 2 answers to that, and the 2 answers depend on how contractors are currently allowed to access your company computers. Let's take one. If, for example, contractors act like an employee where they're allowed to walk into your office and use your computers, then they can design, review, and approve just like any Meridian would. So any Meridian user would. So we call those embedded contractors. If, on the other hand, contractors do not have access to your internal computer systems, then we can consider packaging documents and transferring them to and from the contractors. During this webinar, we saw a couple of ways to package documents and send them out to make them available to contractors. And we saw how you could import the return package of documents. We also mentioned a portal, Meridian 360, that makes this transfer and handover of documents a lot easier. Look for an announcement in a webinar on this soon.
Okay. Instead of navigating to a status screen to see the documents have been changed, can an automatic email or text message be generated?
Yes, to several people actually. For example, the person that's responsible for making the next step, approving or reviewing or modifying. As soon as the document lands on their quote-unquote to-do list, we can trigger an email or even a text message to that user to let them know they've got something on their to-do list. In addition to that, the manager of that task, whether it's a document controller or project manager or project lead, for example, can be notified with a similar message. Someone else, in addition to that, I know there's a third part to this answer, someone else in addition to that could actually subscribe to that document and actions happening to that document. So even though they're not directly involved with the workflow or process, they can be passively informed.
Okay, let's take one more question.
Okay.
Can this solution be configured to comply with specific regulatory requirements?
Yes, Meridian can. Many of our customers actually use Meridian as part of their overall strategy to comply with regulatory compliances. For power generation, for example, this may be FERC or NERC regulations regarding cybersecurity. For pharma and biotech companies, this is most likely FDA regulations regarding the management and approvals of electronic documentation relevant to production lines. 21 CFR 11 is the code. And for many customers in general, document retention policies can be applied within the Meridian system to help with the requirements.
Okay. Well, thank you all so much for your questions, and thank you, Chris, for your detailed answers. If we didn't get to your specific question today, we'll have somebody follow up with you individually to make sure we get your question answered. And otherwise, if you have any additional questions or would like to watch any of our past webinars on demand, you can use the links on the next slide. And also, as a reminder, all those attending today will receive a thank you email from us with a link to view the recorded version of this webinar. So we hope you enjoyed today's webinar and would like to invite you to register for our next webinar, Maintenance and Engineering Connected, which will take place on Thursday, October 22nd at 11 a.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central European Time. And lastly, when you close your GoToWebinar browser today, you'll be prompted to fill out a short 5-question survey about this webinar. We ask that you please just take a few moments to provide us with your feedback so that we can continue to improve our webinars. So with that, thanks again everyone for attending and have a great day.